Hey guys, so today we've got my final 2022 NHL draft rankings with the draft only a few days away. So I'm going to be ranking my top 50 players for this draft. I also have just come out with my 2022 final NHL mock draft, which will be linked in the description below. That is a mock draft, so I'm going to be picking players for the team. But for this one, this is just my personal rankings of all the players. So each spot, like, forget about the teams, this is just my rankings. But make sure to also check out the NHL mock draft. It's a full two-round mock draft. So let's get started here. And for my honorable mentions, just missing out on this, I've got Mats Lindgren, Sam Renzel, Pano Femus, Bryce McConnell-Barker, and Noah Warren. Mats Lindgren is actually quite interesting. I really tried to get him in here, but he just missed. I think he's quite an underrated prospect, and he can be a very good top four offensive defenseman, although he is quite a risk, which is why he just missed out. But starting off here, number 50, we've got Christian Kyrou, Jordan Kyrou's younger brother. He's a defenseman. He's a really good offensive defenseman who put up 60 points in 68 games last year in the OHL. 48, we've got Alexander Perevalov, the Russian left wing. At 47, we've got draft year -1 prospect, Tucker Robertson. And 46, Ludwig Persson. And 45, the German Julian Lutz. So Alexander Perevalov did play in the MHL last year, which is the Russian Junior League. And a lot of teams, I think, are taking big risks taking the Russians, as we don't even know if Russians are going to be able to come to the NHL, which I think could deter teams from taking Russians higher on in the draft unless they're very good prospects. But I think Perevalov will still be a second-round pick, and he's still an extremely talented prospect, but I think has the potential to be a solid middle six winger. At 47, Tucker Robertson, I think, is a very interesting one because he is a draft year -1 prospect. He was passed up on last year's draft, but he put up 81 points in 68 games with the Peterborough Petes last year, so he is older and more developed. I think he can still be a very solid third-line center. Like, he put up still like good numbers this year. And if you put them up in this draft, he's a surefire first-round pick. At 46, Ludwig Persson, he played in the Swedish J20 League, and Persson put up 61 points in 41 games with Frölunda, their J20 team. So I think he could be a very solid forward. And at 45, we have the German Julian Lutz. At 44, we have the other Jack Hughes, Ken Hughes, Habs general manager Ken Hughes' son. At 43, Elias Salomonsson. 42, Reiger Lorenz, and 41, Ty Nelson. So Jack Hughes put up 16 points in 39 games with Northeastern University in the NCAA. Again, this is not the Jack Hughes in the NHL. It would be fun if he could go to the Devils, though, but he is still a solid two-way center. At 43, Elias Salomonsson is, I think, a bit of a gamble. He was originally supposed to be a first-round pick about a year ago, and he was even looking like one of the draft's top defensemen, but his stock has fallen quite a bit. Although he still has the potential to be a very good top four two-way defenseman. He put up 22 points in 35 games, including 11 goals and 11 assists in the Swedish J20 League. Roger Lorenz is quite a gamble, although it could pay off a lot. So this year in AJHL, Lorenz put up 85 points in 60 games, and I think teams are really starting to warm up to this junior league with the AJHL, where Calle came out of. Ken Johnson came with the BCHL. I think they know that there is a lot of talent in there. Although you're taking a bit of a risk, it is a weaker league, so these guys are kind of expected to dominate and put up really good numbers there. However, it is kind of hard to tell, but I think they know that you could be finding stars there. Teams are going to be biased against them since it is a weaker league. I think Roger Lorenz could still be a very good center in the NHL. 41, we've got Ty Nelson, former OHL first overall pick, and he had a bit of a disappointing year, only playing 51 points in 66 games, the North Bay Battalion. He's an offensive defenseman. He's not good. He's not good defensively. He's a defensive liability. But he's a very dynamic offensive player. And if all goes well, he could end up being kind of a Quinn Hughes light type player. He's never going to be good defensively. One of the big concerns is he didn't put up overly impressive offensive numbers this year, along with obviously not being good defensively, which is why he's kind of fallen out of the first round. But I think he could be a solid high upside pick for someone in the second round that he could end up turning into a steal if his offense really continues to develop and he can at least get to a competent defensive level. At 40, we've got Owen Beck, a center who played with the Mississauga Steelheads of the OHL. 39, Matthias Havlid. 38, Yuri Kulich. And 37, Luka Dalbelbaluz. So Owen Beck is a very high floor, low ceiling type of guy. He put up 51 points in 68 games with the Steelheads this year, and he's probably going to be a solid third-line center. So I think he could end up going in the late first round with a playoff team who wants to get a guy who won't necessarily have the highest upside, but can kind of fill in a depth bottom six role. I think what Beck would be, which is why he's in the top 40. He won't be overly great, but he does have the tools to be a solid third-line center. Matthias Havlid is a very interesting prospect. He's an undersized defenseman. He's quite small, but he put up 19 points in 29 games in the Swedish J20 League. So I think he has the potential to be a solid top four defenseman if he can bulk up and get that size. He's good defensively, has a good stick, and he also is Also a good offensive player as well. 38, you have Yuri Kulich, and Yuri Kulich put up 14 points in 49 games in the top Czech league this past year, and I think he has the tools to become a very good middle six center. Not only is he a solid playmaker offensively, but he's also actually a really good scorer. He could shoot. A lot of the times he puts up more goals and assists, and he really got on the map and rose into the first round for a lot of people after having a very impressive U18 tournament. Absolutely dominating teams like Canada and the US, with guys like Connor Bedard and Adam Fantelli in that tournament. So he played really well in those tournaments, which has really risen his stock up. Although I don't think he's quite a first-round prospect. I think I could definitely see some teams taking him at the back end of the first round. He could be a very good two-way center. If he ends up, his ceiling, I think, is a solid, even second-line center. And I think we could definitely see him being a solid middle six, two-way center who can also score and do a lot of things offensively. 37, we have Luca Dalbelbaluz, and for some reason that says D. He's actually is a center. Played for the Mississauga Steelheads this past year with Owen Beck, and he put up 76 points in 68 games. So I'd say he's a borderline first-line prospect. He put up great numbers and has risen a lot this year. Although the thing is, some of his skills, a lot of people are saying, are not very translatable to the NHL. So he could be a bit of a risk, but he is still a great dynamic offensive player. He can be a very good middle six center. Next up at 36, we've got Tristan Luneau, former QMJHL first overall pick. 35, Filip Bystedt. At 34, Owen Pickering. And at 33, Gleb Trikozov. So Tristan Luneau has suffered quite a bit of injuries and stuff, which is causing his stock to fall. But I think can still be a very good top four defenseman. You're taking a bit of a gamble there, but if it does pay off, he can even be like a solid number 3, number 2 defenseman in the NHL. Although you're taking a risk, but he can still be a very good two-way defenseman. Unlike Ty Nelson, he's good offensively, but also can play defense as well. Filip Bystedt's an interesting player. A lot of people are super high on him. Others are not as high. Right now, he's kind of supposed to go anywhere between the end of the first round to the late, anywhere in the second round as well. He's a great skater and has shown a lot of upside offensively. He's also a solid playmaker and can play defense, but hasn't necessarily put it all together. But the big thing is his skating. He's a very good skater, and if he can build off of that, he can be, I think, a solid second-line center in the NHL. Owen Pickering is a very good two-way defenseman, and this is a class that is dominated by a lot of smaller offensive defensemen. Owen Pickering is a bit bigger, and he's also good defensively, so I think that for that reason we could see him going in the first round. And Gleb Trikozov at 33 in the MHL Russians Junior League. He put up 45 points in 35 games with 23 goals and 22 assists. He's a very dynamic offensive player who I could see being a top 15 player in this class, but I think he falls for two reasons. One of them being he is Russian, so I think you are taking a bit of a risk, and I have had some Russians falling here just because I think you're taking a risk taking these Russians. However, he's an extremely talented player, and also I think he could work a bit on his defense as well. However, he has the potential to be a very good second-line center. At 32, we've got the very interesting Russian winger in Ivan Miroshnichenko. At 31, American defenseman Ryan Chesley. At 30, American forward Jimmy Snuggerud. And at 29, towering defenseman Leon Bichelle. So, as I said, Ivan Miroshnichenko is very interesting, and he might be one of the most interesting players in this class. So he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, so he's going to be out for pretty much all year for next year, although he is back on the ice. So I think teams are still going to be kind of willing to pick him in the 20s, but before that, earlier in the year, like before this year, he was kind of a surefire top 10 pick. That was kind of where he was supposed to go, and even before that, he was kind of supposed to be a top 10, 15 pick for most of this year, and he's kind of fallen to the end of the first round because obviously you're taking a risk with this disease that he has, but again, I kind of have him at 32 because he didn't have overly impressive numbers to begin with, 16 points in 31 games, and although I think and also, obviously, with the injury concerns as well, I think he could be a great player and end up being a very good top 6 winger. He's a great shooter, so he could end up being a solid 25, 30 goal scorer in the NHL. However, you are taking a risk, and he could end up busting for you. Ryan Chesley is he's a two-way defenseman, although he did not progress much offensively last year, which is kind of a big concern, not putting up good totals at all with the USNTDP, but he is still very sound defensively. He's a great stick on the defensive end, so I think he will probably end up being a solid second pairing, more defensive defenseman, because his offense will need to improve. However, it hasn't developed much, but he is still good defensively, and if his offense improves, I think he can be a very good second pairing defenseman. At 30, we have Jimmy Snuggerud. This is quite low for him, to be honest. I'm quite a big fan of him. He's a good scorer. He's great offensively. Played with Chesley in the USNTDP. I think he will probably end up being a center in the NHL because he's a very good two-way player. He's great defensively and makes great plays with the stick, especially. He can do stuff in the neutral zone. Sometimes he even is a bit late to get back, but I think that will be improved. And overall, he is one of the best two-way centers in this class, and I mean, he's got a great stick, defensively, great stick checker. So I think he could be a very good, even third line checking center at the very least, and he'll be a solid middle six center. At 29, we have Liam Michel. He's huge. He's 6'5", so he's a massive defenseman, but he can also skate, which I think is a great combination. He also has good offensive instincts as well, but he's probably going to be more of a bigger defensive defenseman. But the thing that separates him from Tyler Myers is he actually plays defense. He's not just big. He can do a lot of other things as well. So he is Swiss, and he put up 3 points in 29 games this year in the SHL. So he's playing pro hockey in one of the top leagues in the world. And I think he is more physically mature. He's more NHL ready just because of that size. And also, I think Michel, he's great defensively, and I think he could be a very solid bottom four defenseman. The ceiling isn't the greatest for him, but I think he could be a solid, maybe number 4 defensive defenseman in the NHL. And I think it will entice a lot of teams because there aren't a lot of defensemen in this class like him. At 28, we've got Vladimir Grutinin, 27, Lane Hutson, 26, Calle Odelius, and 25, Jagger Firkus. So this is probably the most interesting set of 4 prospects here. Grutinin was listed at only 5'8", 159, so he's an extremely small defenseman. And on top of that, he is Russian, but in terms of talent, he is right up there with anyone in this class. He's such a good player offensively. He's so dynamic, and I think he'll be an amazing guy on a team's power play. And he also is good defensively. He has great defensive instincts, but he needs to bulk up and get bigger because he's not going to be able to survive in the NHL level. He put up 13 points in 18 games as a defenseman, which is quite impressive in Russian's junior league. And I think he has all the tools to become even like a top pairing defenseman. He could end up even being the top defenseman in this class. But the reason why he is so low is because he's smaller. He's not going to be able to handle the NHL at this rate. I think he's still a few years away, and he's going to need to bulk up and get stronger. And he also is Russian, so obviously that concern is there as well. But if all things end up working out, he has the ability to become a top 10 player in this class, one of the best defensemen, and he could end up being a steal for whatever team picks him. He's going to be a great puck-moving defenseman in the NHL, although I think he is a big boomer bust prospect, and there's a risk he never ends up really making it to the NHL for a multitude of reasons, but if he does, I think he can be a very good first-pairing puck-moving defenseman. And at 27, we got another very undersized defenseman in Lane Hutson. So he played in the US NTDP this year and put up 63 points in 60 games, but also he's listed at only 5'8", 159, so he's a very small defenseman. I don't think his upside is quite as high as Grutinin, although I think he is a bit less of a risk, obviously because he's American, so you don't have the Russian factor, but I think he's a bit more NHL ready. So obviously he's an offensive defenseman, very puck-moving defenseman, very similar to Grutinin, and I think he's also a bit better defensively as well than Grutinin. But yeah, he's an elite puck carrier and very aggressive. Also, he's a great skater, something you like to see, but he will obviously need to bulk up. And he sometimes does overcommit to one side, so he leaves that opportunity for the defender to pass. But I think the upside is definitely there to be very solid, even first pairing number 2 defenseman. At 26, another defenseman in Calle Odelius. He's quite an underrated prospect in my opinion. So he's another Swede, and in the J20 League with the Djurgårdens in Sweden, he put up 30 points in 43 games. And I think he has potential. I think he will be a very good two-way top 4 defenseman. The upside isn't nearly as high as Hutson or Grutinin, but I think he will be a very good second-pairing defenseman in the NHL. I think he still has solid upside, and he's a great two-way defenseman, great offensively and defensively as well. And 25, Jagger Firkus, very interesting and controversial prospect in this draft. So, I mean, I think he's a first-round prospect, but we could even see him falling to the end of the second round, maybe even the third round. He was underrated for much of the year, but over the past couple of months, you really start to recognize him, and he started to gain traction. He put up 80 points in 66 games with the Moose Jaw Warriors in the WHL. He's a right wing, also can play the other side as well. He's a very dynamic offensive player. He's a great playmaker, and I think he has the potential to be very good second-line playmaker on the wing. However, I think he does need to improve his defense a little bit, and he is a bit smaller, but I think the upside is definitely there, and teams should really recognize the ability and how his very good production last year in the WHL. At 24, we've got Isaac Howard, 23, Rutger McGroarty, 22, Seamus Casey, and 21, Kevin Korchinski. So we got a few US NTDP prospects here. A lot of them are kind of supposed to go in that late first-round range. And then a Canadian offensive defenseman in Kevin Korchinski. So Isaac Howard, I think he could easily end up being a top 20 prospect in this class and going in the top 20. He's a great offensive winger. The defense is not there. It's going to need to improve. He's going to be probably quite incompetent defensively in the NHL. He's all offense, but he is a very good playmaker offensively. He's also got an elite shot as well, which I think is the big thing with him. He put up 82 points in 60 games with the US NTDP. So that's amazing production. And with that alone, you could definitely see him being in the top 15 at least. However, he doesn't have the defense, but I think he can still be a very good second-line guy, kind of like a JT Miller-like player. And then we got Rutger McGroarty, who's a bit different. He's a great offensive player, but he also can't. He's great defensively as well, and I think he can be very good at 2A, 2C. However, he has constantly been getting very underrated. I think he's easily a first-round prospect. He got 69 points in 54 games with the USNTDP. He's a very good all-around 200-foot player who also is going to bring a lot of impact offensively as well. And then Seamus Casey at 22. Again, he's part of that group of undersized, talented offensive defensemen. He put up 33 points in 46 games with the USNTDP U18 team. He's committed to the University of Michigan next year, but he is only 5'10", 172. So he's quite a small defenseman, but he's not bad defensively on top of being very dynamic offensively as well. So I think he has that upside. Very good number 2 or number 3 defenseman. And then another offensive defenseman at 21, and Kevin Korchinski. I mean, I've seen people have him going in the top 10 even for this class. I originally had him a bit lower, but I think I had to move him up. He is very good offensively, put up 65.67 games, so almost a point per game as a defenseman with the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL. He's a very good offensive player and can be a really good power play quarterback, although his defense is going to need to improve. He's kind of like a Ty Nelson, except he does have that better production, which is why we've seen him rise up. And guys like Ty Nelson fall down, as they both are suck defensively, but Korchinski's offense production has been better, so he just misses out on the top 20. Now moving on into the top 20. So at 20, we've got the Russian Danila Yurov. At 19, the most underrated player in the class in Jordan Dumais. At 18, Marco Kasper, who's seen a big rise up as of late. And 17, Filip Mazar. So let's talk about Danila Yurov. I think he's a very interesting player. I think he could end up being a very good creative play driving winger in the NHL, and he has, I think, all the tools to be a great player and could end up being even a top 5 player in this class. However, we have barely seen him play this year. In the KHL, he's averaged about 2 minutes of play per game. There's been some games where he hasn't played at all, and if you look at his game log, like, he played in the last game of the year, 8 minutes and 41 seconds, but aside from that, like, he's played a couple games for around 3 minutes, and then most of them are kind of like around 1 or 2 minutes, which is absolutely crazy, so we barely got to see him play. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying he's played 2 minutes a game. It's true. However, the tools are there, and I think the potential is there to even be a very solid first liner, to be a great play driving winger, and he still put up really good numbers last year in the MHL, 36 points in 23 games, which is better production than guys like Nikita Kucherov and Artemi Panarin in their draft years. However, I think you're taking a risk, and I think teams are going to be a bit concerned with him because they haven't got enough scouting and seen him play much, but I think he can still be a very good offensive play-driving winger. At 19, as I said, the most underrated player in this class in Jordan Dumais. So Jordan Dumais played in the QMJHL this year, and he put up incredible numbers, 109 points in 68 games with the Halifax Mooseheads. So much better production than Shane Wright, Matthew Savoy playing in the CHL. And I think it's a bit easier to get those big point totals in the QMJHL. However, you're playing a lot of bigger guys. It's the most physical league. And Jordan Dumais, I think the reason why he's kind of people are still kind of low on him is because he's small. He's 5'9". He's not physical. He's only 5'9", 165. He's going to need to probably bring up that size and physicality a little bit, but I think the upside is there to be an absolutely incredible, dynamic, playmaking top 6 forward. I think put him with a really good center. He's going to do great things, and I think he's could end up being a top player in this class. I've seen comparisons to kind of being a Joshua Watt type player, which I kind of agree with. He's not going to be a first-round pick. I would be very happy if the Habs end up picking him, French-Canadian, bringing him in the second round, although we could even see him fall to the third round as well. But his production is so good, and I think you are taking a bit of a risk. His defense is not great, but he is still such a good player offensively. He's going to be a stud on the power play, and I think he'd end up being one of the steals of this draft. At 18, Marco Kasper, he was actually ranked 10th in Bob McKenzie's rankings, and like Owen Beck, he's a high floor, low ceiling type of guy, except I think that his floor is kind of a third-line center, and his ceiling is a second-line center. He put up really good numbers in the SHL this past year, so Kasper put up 11 points in 46 games, so really good production in the SHL. And I think he's a great skater and has great IQ and has the ability to become a very good second-line center. But I think he kind of maxes out as that, which is why he's not higher. However, I think he's going to be a very good low-risk pick and can be a very good middle six center for whoever picks him. And at 17, we've got a much different player than Kasper and Filip Mazar. So Mazar is a higher upside and riskier prospect. He's a very good winger and put up 16 points in 37 games in Slovakia. He's a very good dynamic offensive player with the ability to become a very good playmaker. He also has a great shot, can be a solid top 6 player. At 16, we've got Seattle Kraken forward Morgan Geekie's younger brother, Connor Geekie. So he's the center of the Winnipeg Ice, absolutely stacked team in the WHL, and he put up 70 points in 63 games. So he's an interesting player, and a lot of people kind of have him lower because it's hard to project him. A lot of people think his potential maxes out as a third-line center. He's a really good power forward. He's big, and he has great offensive tools, but he's not a good skater. He's a really bad skater, and I think that could really hold him back. However, he's a great playmaker and has, I think, the ability, if he does get a skating coach, and really works on his skating, which is probably the most improvable trait for a player. I think he could end up being a very good top 6 forward, and I think even the upside is there if he kind of gets over that hump to be a very good 2C, like a cup level number 2 center. So he could be like a first line center on a lot of teams in the NHL. However, you're taking a risk with that skating and really hoping that can improve, which I think kind of drops his stock. And his production wasn't overly impressive. Like 70 points in 63 games is good, but it's not amazing. At 15, we got Liam Ogren. He's a high floor left wing. He put up 58 points in 30 games, almost 2 points a game with the Gardens in the J20 League. It's a really good production, and I think he has all the tools to become a very good second line left wing. I don't think he has a great upside, but he is very NHL ready, and I mean, he could be ready to kind of go. I think you give him another year Gleb play pro in the SHL, and then he could even come in for the 23-24 season to the NHL. He's very NHL ready. He's got a lot of tools, and I just don't think he'll be very good. He won't be a true first-line elite player, but I think he does have a high floor and will probably kind of be that second-line left wing. At 14, we've got Pavel Mintyukov, a very good offensive defenseman. He's Russian, but he did spend this past year playing with the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL, where he put up 62 points in 67 games. So slightly worse production than Kevin Korchinski, although I think he is a lot more defensively refined than him, and his defense is still, I think still has room for improvement, but he is a very good potential power play quarterback on the offensive side of the ice. And at 13, we've got one of the draft's best shooters and pure snipers, and Cutter Gauthier. He's a left wing from the USNTDP. He's risen up a lot, and a lot of people have him as a top 10 prospect, even top 5, which I think is a bit too high, although I think he kind of falls in the category of a borderline top 10 prospect. He put up 65 points in 54 games, so really good numbers, with 34 of them being goals. However, it isn't much more than guys like Isaac Howard and Rutger McGroarty, who are a lot lower, but I do think he's still a very good goal scorer and will end up being a solid a consistent 30-goal scorer in the NHL, and I think he'll be a very solid top 6 winger. Now at 12, we've got Joachim Kimmel. At 11, Denton Matejchuk. At 10, Noah Ostlund. And 9, Frank Nazer. So Joachim Kimmel put up a historic start to the year. He put up amazing numbers and was almost a point per game in the league. He led the league in scoring for a bit before he got injured. So for the first few months, he was on fire, and people were even saying, this is a top 3 player in the draft. But he cooled down a lot at the end of the year, and he sits at 23 points in 39 games with JYP in the Liga, with 15 of those being goals. So like Cutter Gauthier, he's a very good goal scorer. That's his number one thing. He's going to be a sniper in the NHL. But the thing with him is I think his upside is a bit limited. I think he will probably be a very good second-line right wing. I think he'd be a great fit with a guy like Matthew Barzal, a true elite number 1 center who's a great playmaker, who can kind of drive that play. And Kimmel can kind of be waiting there, and he's not just kind of a guy who just sit there and needs to be fed the puck. After getting the puck, he can make a few moves or two. He's not going to do that amazingly. He's not the greatest playmaker, but I think he does have solid puck skill still and will be able to create that space on his own to make the goal. And even he can kind of be a guy on that first line where you have that number 1 center, you have that number 1 winger, and then Kimmel is kind of that other guy who can score a lot of goals for that team. And his upside is not the greatest, as I said, but I think he can still be a very good player. And the league of production is very good, although he did slow down. He got quite lucky in the first half and kind of went on shooting bender with a really high shooting percentage. However, I do still think he's a very good goal scorer, and in the NHL will be a very effective one. At 11, we got Denton Matejchuk, another offensive defenseman of the CHL. So he played with the Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL, putting 64 points in 65 games, so almost a point per game. He's a very dynamic offensive player. On the offensive end of the ice, he's going to be absolutely amazing on the power play. He can be a very good power play QB. He has great vision, makes great passes. He also has a great shot from the back end, from the blue line as a defenseman, and just can do a lot on the offensive side of the ice. He's a great playmaker, amazing vision, except a lot of people have worries about the translatability of his play, and he makes a lot of plays and passes that he can do in the WHL that just won't be possible in the NHL. He also is a bit smaller, so that's another thing. I think he's 5'11", so not as small as some of the other guys, but for NHL defenseman, that is still quite small. However, I think the upside is unreal, and if he can really translate his play to the NHL, I think he'll be a very good number 2 or number 3 defenseman. The question is if he can do that. He also needs more defensive consistency. He's also an amazing skater as well. But sometimes he kind of overcommits in the offensive ice, goes too deep, and gets caught lacking and can't get back to face a rush for the other team, can't get back to do his role on defense. I think if he kind of learns that with the coaching, that will kind of be improved, and he'll be more defensively responsible. He still has a good stick on the defensive end, and I think he's quite an underrated defender, which is why he just misses out on the top 10. At number 10, we've got a really dynamic player with a high offensive ceiling with Noah Ostlund. So I'm a big fan of Noah Ostlund, and I think he is quite underrated. He put up 42 points in 32 games with the Detroit Gardens in the J20 League, so not quite as good production as Liam Owen, who I think is a better player right now, but Noah Ostlund has all the tools to become an amazing second-line center in the NHL. I think has the potential and upside to even go beyond that. He's a very good playmaker, and I think he can be, he'll be a very good number 2 center on a cup-level team, which is why he's kind of in this top 10. I think the upside's unreal, although he kind of still needs to get there. I think you still give him a couple of years in Sweden to kind of work it out, playing in the SHL next year. But I think he has all the tools, along with being a great skater, to become a very good player in the NHL. And then at number 9, you have Frank Nazar, another guy from the US NTDP. He's a great right wing, and he put up 70 points in 56 games with the US NTDP. So he's just such a good all-around offensive player. He's not just a one-dimensional player. He can really do everything. He's a great skater. He has a nice shot. He's also a great playmaker. Has great vision. Can be a very solid play driver. I think he has all the tools you'd want for a very solid top 6 winger. So he also can play the center. I think he'll probably be more better off as a winger. He's also not horrible defensively as well. So I think this is kind of why I do see him as a top 10 prospect. Just all around, he's amazing offensively. I think he's a very dynamic player and has all the tools you want for a potential top 6 offensive talent. Moving into the top 8, we've got Jonathan Lekkerimaki at 7, Juraj Slafkovsky at 6, defenseman David Jiricek, and at 5, Matthew Savoy. So let's start off with Lekkerimaki. He's a very high upside player. I have him, I think, with Noah Ostlund, he doesn't have quite the upside that Lekkerimaki does, although Lekkerimaki is still quite raw, but he put up 9 points in 26 games in the SHL. So almost as good production as Marco Kasper, and I think his tools and his upside is a lot higher. He's quite small. He's only 5'11", but 172. He's going to need to bulk up a bit as he does get knocked around. But even in the J20 League, he put up 35 points in 26 games. And in the UA teams, put up 15 points in 6 games. So he had a really dominant tournament there, which really rose his stock. But overall, I think the transition to the SHL has been seamless. He put up 7 goals and 2 points. He's a very good shooter. I think that's the main thing. He's going to be a sniper in the NHL. He can play center. I think he's going to be a winger. I think he can be a very good top 6 right wing. He has the potential to become a really good, elite first-line right wing. Could be a 30, 40-goal scorer who also can move the puck around. He's not just a one-dimensional scorer. I think he's more dynamic and more of a playmaker, more creative than Calle. 7, Juraj Slafkovsky. I was absolutely shocked when I saw Bob McKenzie have him first on his rankings. I did not think that would happen. He's an interesting player. I think by mainstream media, they're big fans of him, and he's pretty much a consensus, number 2 guy at this point, a top 3 guy at this point for the mainstream media. Except I've seen other people have him ranked outside the top 10 even, which I think is a bit obsessive, but he put up 10 points in 31 games. So nothing crazy in the league. Jesperi Kotkaniemi had a much better production in the league. He went 3rd overall, and he has not turned out great in the NHL. But the big thing with him is that he did amazing in the Olympics. He put up 7 points in 7 games, put up a point per game, 7 goals, so all goals in that tournament, playing against men. The one concern I have is there are no NHL players, so a lot of them are kind of old, guys in their 30s, kind of scrappy players who are kind of washed and not that good. The level of competition was great. However, I think that is still he's done really well in international play, and if you combine all his international games, they're actually more than his Liga play. So I think they should be taken into strong consideration. He's a very good power forward. I think he has the tools to become a very good first line power forward winger. He's 6'4". He's a very big body guy. He can really get to the net. He has all the tools you want offensively. He can play make, and he's also a great scorer. However, I do think that upside is a bit limited. He won't necessarily be a franchise winger. I don't think he'll kind of be like a Mikko Rantanen, even David Pastrnak type winger, but I think he can still be a very good first-line power forward. So at 6, David Jiricek. He's a very good two-way defenseman, which is the big thing. So I think the big argument here is Nemeth versus Jiricek. I do have Nemeth higher. You'll see him in the top 4. But here at 6, I have Jiricek. I think it's very close with these guys. And I'd like to say for this whole draft, all these guys are, a lot of these guys are really close. It's better to put it into tiers here, but I think, especially at the end of the first round, this class is just so deep that a lot of these guys are really close, and there's guys that kind of are towards the end of the first round, they'll kind of be mid-first round picks in a lot of other drafts, and I think in the early second round, guys like Gleb, Trikozov, I think should easily be first round guys. So this is a very deep class with a lot of guys that are close together. But as we get into the top here, I think Jurek has the tools to become a very good first pair and two-way defenseman. He won't, I think, blow you away with his offensive ability. He still has good offensive talent. He put up 11 points in 29 games in the top Czech league, HC Plzeň, so good numbers there, and I think he'll be a very solid two-way defenseman in the NHL. He's going to be very good offensively as well as defensively, and I think he can be a solid number one defenseman and a 5-mouth piece of boy. So he's probably, I'd say he's a top 2 skater in this class, so I'm going to be Brad Lambert, which we'll get to in the top 4. But Matt Stoy put up 90 points in 65 games in the WHL. He's a very good playmaker, and I think he has the potential to become a very good, at least point per game, even 90-point guy in the NHL. He's being constantly underrated, which I don't get. I think he's an amazing player, and I think he's a top 5 player in this class. I think at least I would say top 7, 8 player, and I think the upside is definitely there. He's an amazing skater and also has all those other tools offensively as well. So now let's get into the top 4. At number 4, we've got Simone Nemec. At 3, Brad Lambert, which is quite an interesting one here, probably the biggest surprise. At number 2, Logan Cooley, and of course at 1, Shane Wright. So I think 1 and 2 are kind of no surprise here, and 4 as well. And Lambert, probably the most controversial player, but we'll talk about him in a bit. But first, Simone Nemec. So he's the best pure offensive defenseman in this class. He's going to be a very good puck-moving offensive defenseman. He's really the modern NHL defenseman. He put up 26 points in 39 games in Slovakia. However, Jurek is the better. He's much better, much more refined defensively than Nemec. But I think Nemec is a much more dynamic, puck-moving defenseman, and I think he's a guy that Montreal really needs. So I don't think we're going to be able to get him, but if we can trade back in the top 10, Nemec is a guy I would love to have. We really need a puck-moving offensive defenseman. Nemec is exactly what we need. But I think he's the tools to become a very good number 1 defenseman. You're saying, oh, he's going to max out kind of as a number 2, number 3 guy. He's going to be an elite defenseman. There's every year there's elite defenseman coming in the draft. I don't get why he's constantly underrated. He's so good. He's such a good puck-moving defenseman, and he's going to be, I think, a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. And then, of course, they got Brad Lambert at 3. He's the best skater in this class, in my opinion. Such a dynamic skater, moving up around from side to side around the ice. And he put up a very underwhelming performance. He put up 4 points in 25 games this year in the Liga, and so he's a 6'1", 183. He's a forward. He plays both center and wing. I think he's probably going to be better off as a center just because of how dynamic he is, moving around on both ends of the ice. But he put up 4 points in 25 games and 6 points in 24 with JYP. He did move to the Lucky Pelicans. Brad Lambert has all the tools to become an amazing, dynamic center and an elite number 1 center in the NHL. And I think upside-wise, he's right up there in this class. Like, I think in terms of he could very much end up being the best player in this class. But I think people just kind of look at his raw production and kind of say, okay, he's not that good. He's not necessarily a top 10 guy. He's a big risk. But the thing with him is he's so fast, such a good skater. He played on really bad teams. He got very unlucky with guys who just couldn't finish. And he's kind of just too fast for the guys. He was just kind of too good for his teammates. He played at such a high pace. He just played at a higher pace than everyone else on his team that they couldn't keep up with him. So he was kind of just too good. And I think whoever drafts him, he should be moved straight to the AHL, get used to that smaller ice surface. And I think he'll do a lot better. And I think, relatively speaking, I think might be better off in the NHL than the Liga, as the guys are just not good enough for him. But he got unlucky with guys who couldn't finish. He's still an elite playmaker, has great vision. He's such a great puck mover. He has great puck skills along with the shot. Like, I think all the tools are there to be one of the best players in this class and be a true elite number 1 center in the NHL and absolutely dominate. At number 2, so Logan Cooley. He's kind of risen up to be that true consensus number 2. Slafkovsky's kind of dethroning him there, except I think, for me, Logan Cooley is the clear-cut number 2 guy in this class. He's so good. He put up 75 points in 51 games in the USNTDP. He's an amazing, dynamic, creative playmaker. I think he has all the tools to become a very good, elite, number 1 center in that NHL, puts up 90 points, and also could be a Selke candidate. He's a very good two-way player. He's great defensively as well, on top of being such a good, dynamic offensive player. So I think he's going to be one of the league's premier playmakers, and I think he's easily the second best player in the class. Lambert comes with a bit more of a risk. I think Kulishnowski is a skater, but he shows so much skill offensively. He's a bit smaller, but I think he's so good offensively, and he's going to be an amazing player in the NHL. And then without further ado, Shane Wright at number 1. No surprises there. He's the best player in this class. He put up 94 points in 63 games. I don't get it. People are saying that's an underwhelming performance, kind of an average year for a first overall pick, which still means he's an average first overall pick, which means he should be like the first overall pick without a doubt. But if you think about it, he broke McDavid's record for most points as a 15-year-old in your exceptional status year in the OHL. It's absolutely crazy. So he put over a point per game as a 15-year-old in the OHL, and then he misses last year because of the OHL season getting canceled. So he misses a whole year of development. Plus, he gets, I think, a leg injury or knee injury as well, which kind of hinders him. And he still puts up amazing numbers. He got up to a slow start, but by the end of the year, he was putting up really good numbers, true first overall quality right there. And I mean, if you look at former first overall picks, he's not that bad at all. I think he's still easily the best player in this class. On top of he's doing that, I think he has like best shot in this class. He's going to be very good, I think, 40, 50 goal scorer in the NHL. And he's going to do that along with being a Selke candidate. He's a great two-way player, best 200-foot all-around player in this class. He's very defensively responsible. I think he's going to be a franchise cup level #1 center. I think he can be a top 10 player in the NHL. People say the upside's not there. The upside is there. You saw what he could do in his exceptional status here. He's an amazing player, and I mean, he not only does he have a great shot, he can do a lot more offensively. He's still an elite playmaker. He has 62 assists. He's great puck skills. He's such a dynamic player, and like on top of being, he's gonna be one of the best shooters in the league. He's gonna be one of the best two-way players. He's gonna be a Selke level player. Like I think Bergeron's a great comparison, but honestly, I think he could kind of be John Tavares player in the NHL. I think that's at the very least. Like I think he could be John Tavares first overall pick. I kind of see him as a slightly worse version of Austin Matthews. His two big things are shot and his two-way play. I don't think it'll be quite as good as Matthews, who's arguably the second best player in the NHL. But I think Shane Wright is still like Matthews. He has those two things, but he's also a very good play driving offensively and can really do everything. I think he's the clear-cut first overall pick. He's super underrated, and he's going to be amazing in Montreal. So there is my draft rankings. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to also watch my 2022 final NHL mock draft as well, linked in the description below. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.